Hello, hello. Welcome to the PG-ish podcast. I'm Erin with your parental guidance to help you grow yourself as a parent and raise healthy, happy, and successful humans. Now that we've settled, and I use that word very loosely, back into the usual routines of school and work, I encourage you to head over to my website, pgishparenting.com, to learn more about us, to catch up on previous episodes, and to become a member of the Weary to Revived course, which is a self-led 5-week class designed to create a blueprint to feel, heal, and redefine joy on your own terms. I mean, don't you think that fall seems like the right time to turn a new leaf and start some new habits before the holidays hit? I do. You can also check out our sponsors like BetterHelp Online Therapy, Thrive Market to make school lunch packing easy peasy, and Peak Teas to keep you feeling well and caffeinated if that's your preference. Links to all of these are in the show notes. I don't love ads, but I do love these companies, which my family uses weekly, if not daily, and I believe you'll love them too. Again, you can check out more of their company details and deals in the show notes. All right, I am coming in hot this week. Perhaps it's the recent full moon, but I kind of blame the back-to-school frenzy of paperwork, drop-off and pickup schedules, and commutes that aren't conducive to any working parent, the asinine homework of core math and number expansion, and well, you know, if you're a working parent, just how much the transition is likely harder on you than your kiddo. And it just takes time to figure it out. But truly, I get fired up about working parents, in particular working moms, and as I mull over the details that don't add up, I get even more frustrated. You know, the schedules that aren't built for working parents or vice versa, depending on which angle you look at it. And then I see these empty school buses drive next to me on the freeway, but I can't get a clear answer from anyone on where they're going and which students get to go on them. I mean, they're empty, so I don't know if anyone actually goes on them. Our school apparently gives public transportation vouchers on the public bus, yet that doesn't answer the yellow school bus paradox for my 7th grader, nor solve my commute woes. Okay, now I'm just complaining, and I don't really want to do that, but I know I'm not the only mom out there struggling with balancing work and childcare, and yet there doesn't seem to be a solution, nor infrastructure that will support the moms. And then there's also the outside comments, you know, where people tell me to ask other moms to help me out. But hey, we're all working, and I have 2 kids in 2 different schools in opposite directions of town, so no, I'm not going to put my burdens on another working mom. So yay for the moms in the workforce, but how do we juggle it all? And as a single mama without a village, this just frustrates me daily. On top of that, I've had a colleague quit recently because she can't figure out the work-life balance either. And nothing against her. I completely understand the mentality to quit rather than to use the brain space to find a solution in a society that would rather ignore the working moms. Thank goodness she has a husband and a family nearby that will allow her to do just that. I mean, I truly feel like the American society just assumes single moms will be broke and always striving. It's like they intentionally don't care. And truly, I don't think that they do. And it's not just the single moms. You know, society dumps all this problem solving on new parents who are thick in brain fog from navigating new parenthood and can't even put 2 and 2 together. And then for us with the older kids, they just kind of throw us out to pasture. So out of sight, out of mind. So many systemic issues are at the root of the problem, yet we can't get to the root of the problem. And I feel like women are getting louder and louder, but there are still no solutions in sight. And I don't know how I'm supposed to take that on as one person, but I really want to find answers. I really want to break the stigmas and change the course of the game because this truly is 100% a game. And to be honest, I don't like games. I mean, there are a few that I really enjoy and that are super fun, but there's always going to be winners and losers. And I know not everyone can win, but at least I like the better odds, especially in this work-life balance scenario. Anyway, I completely digress. Went off on my own TED Talk here. Like I said, I was coming in hot from this back-to-school nonsense that is my new normal again. So let me turn this over to Chelsea Conaboy. She is a health and science journalist who also wrote the book Mother Brain. She believes that many of the stories we're told about the nature of parenthood are wrong. And today she will share her findings on maternal instinct, matrescence, and how to support families. And let me tell you, while you check this out, I might just go take a nap. I am one tired mother.
So if it's not maternal instinct, how do we learn how to parent?
Yeah. So an instinct is, by definition, a rigid pattern of behavior. It is something that unfolds in like a universal pattern across the species. That's what an instinct is. What new parenthood is a distinct stage of development. It is a process that we are shaped by our changes in our hormones and by our babies themselves, who are these really powerful stimuli for the brain. And those changes can look and feel, they follow similar patterns generally, but they can look and feel differently from individual to individual. And they are shaped by our circumstances. All of what we bring to our position in life, all of the strengths and challenges that we've faced previously, our life experiences, our social context, the kinds of supports we have, differences in our brain chemistry and how our hormones, develop during pregnancy and afterward. And so it is a stage of development that's more akin to adolescence than it is to some sort of, there is no like Lego circuitry that like snaps into place. That is your maternal instinct that like comes online once they put your baby on your chest. It is a process that happens in a really intense way in the early postpartum period, and then is like continual change for your whole experience of parenting, really.
There was a word you used, which I'm now forgetting, but it wasn't your word, but it was adolescence, but matrescence, which I just thought was brilliant, because it is funny how much attention we pay to the changes of teenagers.
Right. I love talking about this comparison because, so that word is actually Dana Raphael from in the 70s, I think, or late 60s. She came up with that idea. And it is to recognize early parenthood as the stage of development. I don't love to use that word because it's so distinctly maternal, but it's a helpful word.
Yeah.
But these changes, which we can talk more about, apply not just to gestational parents, but to all. But I love making the comparison to teenagers because, first of all, it's like there's good scientific evidence. It's young, but like solid, that the degree of change that we go through in the early postpartum period is similar to what happens during adolescence. Specifically, there's this landmark set of studies that looked at, this was in women specifically, that looked at women before they were ever pregnant, and then immediately after pregnancy, and then 2 and 6 years out. They took brain imaging looking specifically at the anatomy of the brain, so the actual like volume and structure of the brain. And it tracked changes across that period that were a volume loss, specifically in areas of the brain related to social cognition, or how we like connect with other people, how we read their mental states and emotions, reflect those things back in ourselves. Something that's like really important when you're parenting a tiny, nonverbal, ever-changing child, right? You have to get really good at knowing what they need and how they're feeling. And so there are volume losses, which are thought to be like a really important fine-tuning of that brain circuitry. And those researchers told me that, when they first published that data, which was made a big splash, even like people within their colleagues within neuroscience came to them and they were like, oh, volume loss, that's why I can't remember anything. Like I'm so forgetful. It's because my brain is shrinking. Like my children are sucking my brain cells, and they were like, no. That's not what's happening here. And so they had this idea of comparing those structural changes across the postpartum pregnancy and the postpartum period with teenage girls. And they found that when they looked at 2 years of adolescence, the degree and basically the shape of the changes that happened in the pregnancy and postpartum period and adolescence were remarkably similar. So they said, like, this is not this is not a neurodegenerative process. This is an adaptive one.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really important thing to talk about that comparison with adolescence, also because the teenage brain science is a little bit farther ahead than the parental brain science. Like, and we've used it in really important ways. Like, we've taken that science and we've used it to change school start times and disciplinary practices and public health messaging around things like substance use and other risky behaviors. And we've also taken it and we've given it to parents themselves, and we've given it to teenagers to say, like, this is what's happening in your brain, and this is what you need to understand in order to really take care of yourself and like to understand your mental health.
Which sort of gets back to where you started, saying that you went to appointment after appointment, and nobody is saying, here's what's, that they may be saying, here's what's going on in your, uterus, but not here's what's going on in your brain.
Right. Let's get out the tape measure and measure your belly again.
Right.
Let's not talk about anything above the neck.
Right. What does that mean for changes we should make as a society? So I want to ask you what should change.
Yeah.
And then I also maybe wanted to ask, if there's something like you started the book feeling like, I want to understand why I'm so worried or why I don't think I'm a good parent or feeling the things I should be feeling. What takeaway would you give to young parents?
Yeah. So it's interesting to call it advocacy, because it's like, is it advocacy, or is it just like calling it as it is? Like, we have no infrastructure to support young families pretty much at all in this country.
But you were living during the pandemic more, at any time, but especially.
Yeah. The pandemic and lots of areas in our society brought to light where our gaps in the social safety net were, and this was a big one. I can't remember. I just heard this. I'm going to say this wrong, but I think in like September 2020, I don't know, like 800,000, maybe more than that, women dropped out of the workforce in 1 month. It might be higher than that. Don't quote me on it, but like a ridiculous number, right? Because they had no other option.
Right.
And it fell on them. Like, it wasn't a shared burden across parents. So,
can I just jump in and say one thing? When you came back, so this was before the pandemic, when Chelsea came back to the office, to the Press Herald, after your first son was born, I just remember it, because Chelsea's always very sort of calming presence and like, and it's newspapers are stressful places. So having a boss who's kind of relaxed and calming and feels, is helpful when you're feeling panicky that your deadline's staring at you and you'll never get it done. But you could see how stressed out you were. You had left a tiny little infant, and then you always had to run home every day. Like, if I asked you a question at 10 to 5 to pick him up.
Yeah. I was on the clock, right? I had to go get him from daycare at a specific hour. I had to work in 3 to 4 pumping sessions in my regular schedule today.
So just to say that the work life was not set up
I started at the Press Herald almost 10 years ago. I was there for 3 years. And I think, I could be corrected if I'm wrong, but I think I'm the only person still who has had a baby in those 10 years, so a gestational parent in the newsroom. So, which is, there are, I could like talk about how the Press Herald could do it better, but also all newsrooms could do it better.
Yeah.
And that's a comment on workplaces generally. And not, without paid leave and affordable childcare, it's really hard to do everything you need to do. And we are the one of 6 countries in the world who don't have a federally mandated maternity leave policy, and most of our peer countries, income-wise, have it for all parents. And I'm not talking 12 weeks; it's 6 months or more, and many to most places. And that is because it is good for the economy. It is good for parents. It is good for children. It balances things in terms of, on the other side of needing affordable childcare. Infant care is the hardest, most expensive care to provide for. If you let parents be with their children during that time, it becomes easier to provide childcare in the later stages. And it's also important for parents who are going through this stage of development. They need time with their babies to have the healthiest transition to parenthood possible. He also asked about what I would say very quickly, what I would tell new parents. I mostly would say, like, to be patient with yourself and to know that it is entirely normal to need support, and that support can take many forms. It is an inherent part of this time of life. Psychological distress. This sounds scary to say it this way, but psychological distress is an inherent part of this life transition, this stage of development. I don't know, like, to a person, any of my friends, anyone I interviewed for this book who didn't experience it either through fertility issues or pregnancy complications, traumatic childbirth, the postpartum period, going back to work, trying to breastfeed. It is inherently, struggle is inherent to the process, but suffering shouldn't be. And so it's normal to need support and find it. And we need to do better to provide it too.
And I think it's so true. You know, post-birth, new parents not only bring a new baby home, they also bring a new self home as they undergo dramatic structural and functional brain changes, which are driven by hormones and the onslaught of just the awareness of a baby around. These changes help all parents adapt, yet this emerging science, which Chelsea points out, provides insights into the ranging experiences of parenthood, which has been absent from the parent conversation, at least publicly. So if you're a mom, I encourage you to listen to the full talk and pick up Chelsea's book, Mother Brain. You can also check out her website, chelseaconaboy.com, and links to her book, her website, and our sponsors can be found in the show notes. If you find PGish helpful, interesting, or encouraging, please share this episode with a tired parent friend. Follow PGish on your favorite podcast platform and share on social so that more parents can learn and grow alongside their kiddo like you. See you next time.